Good morning, radio listeners, TV viewers, and our followers on social media. This is your program, The Morning Show with Elton Jones, and a very pleasant Thursday to you. Today we have some special guests in the house. We have the chair and members of the CFT, the Financial Oversight Committee, in the house to give some information on the function of CFT and what they really do. I want to welcome in the house Mr. GRADUS, the chair of the CFT. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
And Mr. Thijs, good morning and welcome. Let me start with the CFT. The CFT, what kind of body is it? Is it a council of state or an advisory body?
It's an advisory body. So actually it was installed in 2010 after the new constitution was
Separate status.
Yes, was established.
Okay. And if I remember well, when it was established, it was said there would be an evaluation of its function every 5 years. So
every 3 years.
3 years.
Okay.
Okay. So
the last one was 2018.
2018. So who decides on the continuation or the cessation of the activities of the CFT?
Well, what is important is that the norms which have been lie down in the law are okay. So
Okay.
we didn't see at the moment that the norms, for example, the ballot budget norm, is okay. So that's a crucial element. For this evaluation.
Okay, we're going to do some other things, but people are interested in hearing there was a large op-ed yesterday that the CFT was invited to Parliament and they didn't show for whatever reason. I'll give you a chance to speak to that issue.
Yeah, sure. We have had at every country of the Caribbean part of the kingdom, we have closed door meetings. We try to inform the Parliament about, we are an advisory body for the government of St. Martin. We are an advisory body for the Kingdom Council of Ministers in The Hague. So, but we have also given information to the Parliament, but it's crucial that it is closed door. The chairman he didn't want to have a closed door meeting, he wanted to have an open door meeting, so we said we only come if there is a closed door meeting, and that's the reason why we didn't show up.
The Parliament argued, the chair and the members argue that they have these meetings before, they've had since 10, many of them, and the meeting is held in 5 minutes after there's a press conference and the same information is given. So why the secrecy?
No, it's not the same information because, first of all, it's because of our role. We are an advisory body of the government, so the disputes of the budget should be taking place between the government of St. Martin and the Parliament. So we give an advice to the government of St. Martin, but it's not the same information. So we tell something about confidential meetings, for example, with the governor, with, for example, also the Minister of Finance, but also the Council of Ministers. We have also some other confidential meetings, and of course we have also a press conference, but then, we judge which information should go to the public. So it's not the same information.
Okay, let's go to the budget. The budget is not, at least in my opinion, exact science. The figures are based on expected revenues, expenditures, what government hopes to get from the NVs, outstanding taxes, fees. So how do you go by judging if the figures are realizable or not?
Well, we try to look at the figures, although that's rather difficult here in St. Martin, because they have expenses, they have income. Let's say that they have expenses about, for this year that's estimated at 485 million guilders. and the income will be about 460 million guilders, so there will be a deficit about approximately 25 million guilders.
Okay, now that deficit is what plays here. This is where we requested liquidity support for. According to the agreement that we have, we're not allowed to have a deficit.
Sure, that's
So, okay, so we need the advice from CFT to be able to ask the Kingdom Council of Ministers for liquidity and to be able to carry that.
No, well, actually, you have to ask for Article 25. Article 25 is, based on Article 25 in 2017, 2018, and also 2019, there was a deficit. So also for the budget 2020, there should be Article 25, which is a decision of the Kingdom Council. So we give an advice based on the budget. We did it last year. We hope to give this advice soon, because, well, we are already almost at the end of February, and there should be an approved budget. Normally it should be before the December, but well, but that's our role. So 25 is very important, and related to that is the issue of liquidity support. Also, the issue of liquidity support is also a decision by the Kingdom Council.
So, first of all, you get the permission to have this deficit. What is important is how do we go, because we hear a lot about having to make up your arrears from years ago, so pay them in. How do we go by setting how these things are paid in what period of time?
Yeah, that's also an important issue. We have been discussion with the government of St. Martin about payment arrears over many years. And what is important that from the budget on 2021, there will be surpluses, because the surpluses can be used to lower the debt, but also to get lower payment arrears.
The one of the arguments from previous governments is that the CFT doesn't look at the social issues that is impacted by the budget pressure, so to speak. They think that if they're able at an earlier stage to attract loans, that they will be able to deal with the social issues in the country. So the government considers SZV and the tax department institutes of government that they could work out differently. And CFT said, no, these have to be made up because they're part of your overall debt project.
Sure, but for example, with SZV, it's about that the payment arrears are about the premium by civil servants. So there is a large delay in paying the premium by civil servants, and I think it should be solved. At the moment, the OZR, which is in Dutch overheidsziektekostenregeling, which is the health care system for civil servants, should be paid. And about your question about social policy, well, we are not, so it's upon the Parliament and also the government to decide which priorities there are. Should it go to healthcare? Should it go to social policy or to infrastructure? That's the budget, right? We are only advisory body which have their tasks written down in this kingdom law on financial supervision.
Do you also have supervisory authority with the government companies and NVs?
Well, we don't have a direct supervisory relation. Of course, we look at the relation between the budget and these government entities. So if they have a relation, for example, by dividend, or, for example, asset fee, so the government is obliged to pay this premium, then of course we look to them. Last week we were here at St. Martin, and we had also a conversation with the direction of the SZV.
The dividend that is, I guess, is per agreement with government and their NVs. I've not seen a direct input or report from CFT on dividend, but is the dividend regulation they have acceptable to the?
Well, sometimes, for example, at the moment, there is in the draft budget, there is dividend by the central bank of Curaçao and Sint Maarten, and that's not realistic. That the same discussion we have had last week in Curaçao. So this dividend is not realistic because also of some currency issues related to the role of the central bank. So from that perspective, we look at the dividend. We also have this discussion about the harbor, the dividend about the harbor, but it's our role is not the governance of these institutions. That's the responsibility of the government or the supervisory board or whatsoever. But our role is the relation with the budget.
The government wants to have a project, a capital project they put in the budget, and the CFT says, listen, this budget amount you have here doesn't permit that, so you have to cut back on your budget, so it's too high. You know, make some cuts to bring it in line with your revenues, with your income, so it affects the capital project. What are the possibility of acquiring loans? And I've heard you said before, you don't see the need for going to loans while you have the trust fund, and according to you, it's not being utilized effectively.
Yeah, but actually, these are two things. The trust fund. Mm-hmm. For example, we were at the hospital. We see that amount from the trust fund will be paid to make the new hospital more hurricane-proof, and also the current hospital also has some investment getting from the trust fund. Where we take a look especially is at the capital expenditure in the budget. For example, they are going to new tax offices, restructuring the tax department, etc., financial management. And what is important that also in the Kingdom law is the possibility that the Dutch government will subscribe on these loans. And the interest rate is then in that case very low. So you see, for example, in other countries in the Caribbean that they have more than 20% of their income goes to the interest, and in Sint Maarten that's only a little bit above 2%. So, but there is of course a role for the CFT to judge whether these are capital expenditures, and it are important capital expenditures which will be in the interest of the people of Sint Maarten.
If the government, the ministers, the minister council asked the CFT, look, we need the money, we can't get a loan. What can the CFT offer help in dealing with the trust fund? Because we know, or we have heard, a lot of tranches has been released, earmarked to different things in this country, but you're here, you're on the ground, and we don't see the things moving. So how can we get assistance?
Yeah, but we don't have. Well, of course, we were informed also this week about the airport. We think there should be a little bit more progress in the airport, but we don't have an official role in the trust fund. So it's the steering committee, it's also the World Bank. Of course, we urge that this takes place, but we don't have an official role in that respect.
Understandable. So the other things now, there are discussions on raising certain taxes, raising certain fees. They're discussing land tax today. When these things come into play, does that, it should at least change the income sector of the budget, and those things you would look at. So would that give us more room, more room for acquiring?
Sure. Perhaps I can give you a figure.
Please do.
In 2012, Sint Maarten has tax income of about 20% of GDP, and also the peers, so other Caribbean islands have 20% as well. If we look at this figure, these are figures by the IMF today, or well, let's say in 2080 to be precise, then the peers has become 23, so 3% more, and Sint Maarten has become 810, so 2% left. So the gap has become 5%. So I think there is room for raising taxes in Sint Maarten. What is very important is that compliance goes up. Compliance is law, and especially at this difficult time, it's very important that everyone pays his or her fair share on taxes. And well, I think there's also room for tax increases. Well, what exactly, I think that's upon the government of Sint Maarten to come with plans, but I believe also based on the figures by the IMF that there is room for tax increases, and that is very important because, well, you can get public expenditure can be paid of that. You talked about the social policy, but also, well, there should be surpluses from 2021
Forward.
Forward, yes.
Okay, well, some of the things that is spoken about here, I had some people on the program, they talk about the debt to GDP ratio as a danger to the country going forward. So our debt is getting too high. As they put it, we're burdening other generations with the amount of debt. What are the dangers in the ratio, and what is acceptable, a debt to GDP ratio?
Well, let's also start in 2010. Then the debt to GDP ratio was a little bit less than 30%. Today, if let's included all loans forecasted in the 2020 budget, then Sint Maarten will have debt to GDP ratio, let's say a little bit less than 45% of GDP. And well, we believe that, but not only we, also the International Monetary Fund, believe that for a small island with, well, there can be all kind of shocks here, that this is the limit, so this 45%, and you're right, this debt should be repaid. There is interest rate, although some of this interest rate is low, but it should be repaid, and it is actually a burden for the next generation. So that's also important, that this surplus will take place from 2021. I repeat it again, but and then the debt to GDP ratio will lower.
But so you're saying that it's acceptable 45%?
Well, acceptable. I think normally we take a norm of 40, but of course there can be some circumstances, for example, the hurricane Irma, that it is temporary above, but there should be a policy to lower it. And well, again, I repeat that it should be go lower after 2021.
The medical services in Sint Maarten is one of the things people talk about. We have seen in many budgets starting from 10 that some of our largest expenditures on medical is for referrals. I've not seen or heard an advice from CFT on that, but it makes sense to think that you need to cut back. That we're building a new hospital is fine, but buildings don't change things. We need the professionals. What is your view on where we go forward with this? Last time it was at 29 million, with these amount of monies going out of the country.
Yeah, I think medical costs are rising in Sint Maarten, you're right. We see also that there is, so we had a discussion last week with the SZV, and there is a shortage in the healthcare funds. There's not only the healthcare fund for civil servants, but all the other healthcare funds, about, a little bit less than 200 million guilders. I think that this is a serious problem, so healthcare costs should go down. Of course, this week we also discussed with the management of the hospital about the medical referrals to abroad. We see that there are some action in it, but I think there should be more, and there should be also about your medicines. There are some proposals on the table, and I think it's upon the government to decide, but here we play a role at advisory body, and we discuss these kind of matters with the government.
The other things, some of the things that are irking people in this country is that things that are important to them are not brought up. We talk figures. It's like we deal in figures, the CFT, the budget, and some of it is over the head of the people. But when we see that parts of the infrastructure where we consider important, schools, hospitals, the library, and those things are not catching up, almost 3 years after the 2017 hurricane, then you can understand the displeasure of the people. And if we have an advisory body that is supposed to look at the financial part and the welfare of the country in terms of budgeting, we would think that we would hear these things included in that. So instead of building large buildings and large structures that at the end of the day don't come down to the aid of the people, that is not brought up in these discussions.
Yeah, but we are an advisory body with our tasks in the law. You have, for example, also your audit chamber, which can play a role in the effectiveness of public expenditure. I saw some good reports of them, and about the trust funds. As I told you, I understand what people are saying, and we see that there is some delays, but that's the responsibility of the World Bank in connection with the steering committee.
In the government of 2015 and 2016 had presented balanced budgets. They were, according to them, they were on their way to 2017 before the hurricane.
No, that's not true.
Well, that's what was reported.
No. Actually, in 2015, there has been a deficit. This has led to an instruction in 2015 as well. And in 2016, in the draft annual report, there was a surplus, but in the annual report, which was signed by the SURB, there was also a deficit. So it's not true that in 2015 and 2016 there was a surplus. There was also a deficit, although it was small in 2016, but that's definitely not true.
Okay, so as per agreement of the CFT, we understand that if country St. Maarten can present 3 consecutive balanced budgets, it would give them the opportunity or the ability to contract loans. Is that a fact?
No. So the loans are applicable if the norms set down in Articles 15 are are done. And actually it's a little bit more complicated because of 25, but under normal circumstances they are applicable for these loans.
So it has nothing to do with balanced budgets.
Yeah, it has to do with balanced budgets, but you don't have a balanced budget, and because of 25, so when the budget goes to the Kingdom Council says that there can be deviation from the balanced budget norm, and also it can also decide that capital expenditures are subscribed by the Dutch government, but that is a decision from the Kingdom Council.
How would you judge the relationship with the CFT and the government and Parliament of St. Martin?
Well, we are an advisory body. I know that our message is not always that nice, and we will do that also in the interest of the people of St. Martin. That's our role, and we will do that. And if there is a closed door meeting next time, we go to the Parliament. With pleasure, we go to the Parliament, but it should be a closed door meeting. And of course, there is a new government. We see that there are a lot of ambitions, and we try to work with them to get a good budget, good financial management. We didn't talk about it, but the last annual report, which is approved, is 2012, not 2019, but 2012. So we also discuss this kind of issues. So sometimes we can be a ruthless truth teller, but nevertheless we hope to have a good relation, as it is all in the interest of the people of St. Martin.
Why is the last approved accounts of 212? Isn't there a norm, isn't there a law that it should be kept up to pace? We are 8 years away.
Yeah.
So
in the summer you should have approved the 2019 budget, but nevertheless you are a long time. So a lot of delay. I agree with you. So this has not had that priority, and it's our role to say that it should get more priority. It's important that actually you are now already busy with the budget 2021. You use the figures from 2019. That's normal. That's financial management. But we see with the new Minister of Finance some interest. He has a background. So we will see. But it's our role to say, well, this is not okay. This is not normal. This should improve definitely.
Some of the things we see, CFT mostly meets with the government. I mean, that they are doing the daily running of the country, and they make agreements. But some of the agreements are things that has to be handled by Parliament. And it seems to be accepted that if they make an agreement, Parliament will automatically adopt it. Why is there not the same meetings with the legislative body to make sure it works in tandem?
I don't.
So you make an agreement with the executive?
No, we don't make an agreement. So the agreement are made by the Kingdom Council.
The Kingdom Council, okay.
So we are only an advisory body.
So advise at CFT, these things are done, but the meetings are held with the executive. And then what we hear in the news, Parliament is holding up things. But there are no meetings with Parliament. That's
we are, as I said,
I know.
The advisory body for the government, and so it's the role for the government to have the discussion with the Parliament.
Yeah. Okay, so You say that you have a new government. The new minister seems to be willing to work with you. What do we need right now? It's not going to happen in 1 year for sure, but to bring things in order, what is the new approach?
Yeah, I think it's very important that the budget 2020 should be passed. So as I told you, we are already at the end of February, so it's important that that should be approved by the Parliament, by the government, that also Article 25, so there should be also discussion with the Kingdom Council. Well, there are very important projects in this budget. Let me mention two important projects. The restructuring of the tax office, that's a very important project. It should be started as soon as possible. And the other project is financial management. Financial management should be improved. We also have made an agreement with the government of St. Martin that there should be an unqualified audit certificate on the annual report 2021. Well, that will take place in 2022. But that's a lot of work, but it's very important that the figures are reliable, that the processes are reliable, and currently the accountancy is very critical about financial management of St. Martin.
Okay, let's talk about the financial management you mentioned. Where are the shortages? Because the government has spoken about building a new building, but is it in the building or in the human resources? Are we short of the expertise, the people, to do this?
Yeah. Yeah, well, of course, what I saw that in the restructuring of the tax department, there is attention for, the equipment, ICT. I think it's very important that ICT go up because, well, that's also important for compliance, for example, but there should be also an improvement of personnel, but that's also included in these plans.
And you tie in the restructuring and the financial management all in one thing?
No, actually there are two projects, but I only mentioned two important projects. Of course, but that's not directly in the budget. It's of course the airport that the reconstruction takes place. That's very important also for the economy, of St. Martin. So we urge, to get the agreement done. But in the budget 2020, there are two very important projects. One is restructuring the tax structure, and the other one is financial management.
The unqualified audit report you said that should be for 2021. How do we reach
the
there?
annual report.
The annual report. What do we have to do to reach there?
Yeah, well, actually there is already a kind of plan, but there is too little progress on that. So it should be higher on the agenda, and I think not only we think that's important, but it should also be Parliament, because the Parliament can play his crucial role, the budget right, only if there is a unqualified audit certificate, because then they know, well, that each decision is exactly given by the what they decided. So I think it's but there are plans. The SORB has have drawn a plan, but it should now go on, and there should be some efforts on that.
In putting the budget together, they go to advice to the the different councils, the SER and the other councils.
I don't think that the budget go to the SER, but that's
No,
that's
okay, but to some of the councils.
but it goes to the Raad van Advies.
Raad van Advies, huh?
Yeah.
And how is this trajectory work? Does the minister have some collaboration with CFT in putting the budget together so you don't get a no, go back with it? Is there some
No,
collaboration?
well, that's a good question. Actually, we have what we call two kind of advice. We have Article 11 advice. That's on the draft budget. That's that actually for the budget, the draft budget at the 5th of February, we have given an Article 11 advice. And we hope it will be in the approved budget, but then we have Article 12 advice, and we have to judge about it, how it stands with the norms in the law, in the kingdom law, on supervision, on financial supervision.
So so we are to understand, or the people are to understand, that if all of these things are complied with, are met, then we should have easy sailing for the approval of a budget.
Yeah, I think so. So actually, we have bring out this to the government on the 5th of February, and within 3 weeks it will be available on our website. We believe that transparency is very important, that people can look at it, the parliament can look at it. So, but well, it is upon the government to deal with this with our advice, and we have a final judge on the approved budget.
How does the CFT go about advising the Kingdom Council of Ministers on instruction? What is the missing part of compliance from government that causes or calls to life an instruction?
Yeah, well, actually, the advice to the Kingdom Council, they are not available for the public, so I cannot say much about that. But but sometimes if we are requested, we will also have an advice to the Kingdom Council.
Okay. No, because I got a feeling that the CFT in the past, from what I've followed, said that certain things need to be done in terms, for instance, on the repayment of arrears, and it was not being lived up to, and then there was not an advice, but almost a threat, if you want to call it that it would be if you don't. So that's what I'm saying.
Well,
what triggers these things?
The payment arrears are in the instruction in 2015. Of course, some of the deadlines in these instructions are delayed because also of the hurricane. But it should be on the agenda of St. Martin. Let's say a little bit. So last year there was the payment arrears are lowered with 50 million guilders. So there are some efforts, but it's not sufficient, and we believe that it should be higher on the agenda, and especially should be the OZR, because it's not only because of the payment arrears, but it is very strange that civil servants don't pay healthcare costs. So, I don't think that's reasonable that people in the street pay healthcare premium, but the civil servants, they don't pay that.
Well, we have some deficiencies in the system that we need to upgrade. What would St. Martin, so the government, country St. Martin, needs to do? We are expecting a surplus in 2021. Yeah. So again, I come back to the last question. What do we need in human resources to be able to keep current in our financial management? So to, as you put it in Dutch, to hold it by, to stay there with that?
No, well, I think what I said. So there are two important plans. But let me focus on the restructuring of the tax structure. That's a very important plan. So there should more compliance. There should be better equipped people. And of course, personal staff should be improved, but there are already plans, and they should now go to execution. So it's now the time for execution.
Okay, we're going to discuss execution and compliance. You know, we would like everybody to be compliant, but if we go heavy-handed execution, what we see is business downturn and layoffs. People get out because the businesses complain that, well, we don't have the money now, we're not making it. The economy is at, last time I read, about 2.6%.
Yeah, but that's I saw the last figures, but in 2019 you have economic growth of 6%. So, well, let's say
5 and a bit.
5.5. So the economy, that's not, of course, businessmen, they don't want to pay taxes. That's normal. That you see it in every country.
Natural.
But you could have a tax office which go and say, well, no, you have to pay because, well, this money is needed for public expenses.
Yeah, but I understand that. But what I'm saying is, how do we protect against them closing down or threatening to close down?
Yeah, well, I don't see close down. Of course, I can judge about every individual business, but I see overall that economy is growing. I saw a growth figure in 2019 of 5.5% of GDP, which is rather high. Which is one of the highest in the world. So I think that there is room for more tax compliance, and you should work very hard on that, because more important that, well, the man in the street, he pays his taxes, but in this times when you need to have a surplus, everyone should pay his or her fair share on taxes. I cannot repeat that enough, but this, well, I'm only an advisor, but this should also be, what is in your interest?
I read an article from Aruba. They said they have about 80% tax compliance. What is an acceptable compliance? I mean, we would like to have 100%, but that doesn't happen. What would be acceptable?
Yeah, that's well. I was in Aruba last week, so we discussed and we see some improvement. So actually, what was interesting, they should have. They have a large debt, so and also a deficit, but you see that they have now a small surplus in 2019 because of an increase in compliance. That's not to say that compliance is already at where it should be. I don't know the English word, but I said, één zwaluw maakt nog geen zomer. Unfortunately, that's Dutch. So I think there are improvements, and you see with Aruba, so that compliance, this is the compliance of what they call the SVB, so it's similar to your SZV. It has increased, and you see that they have now a surplus. So that's the first time they have a surplus since, many years. So I think there is a lot of improvement, and I also saw figures from the Social Economic Council in Aruba, and I think there's still room to increase it, although there is also a discussion about definitions. I will not bother your listeners with that. I understand that this discussion also takes place in Aruba, but in Sint Maarten, in Curaçao, and also in Aruba. There is much room to raise compliance.
Level. Yeah, I know, but I said it would be nice if you get 100%, which doesn't happen anywhere. But what would be acceptable?
Yeah, I think, I believe. I don't like to give a figure if it's not exact. So that's. But I think it should be improved
as high as possible.
As high as possible. Yes, that's what I want to say.
Okay, so so you're satisfied that the islands are on the right track, even though they're not there yet.
No, well, that's not what I said, to be honest. I think, to go back to Sint Maarten, there is, there is much room for improvement. I mentioned financial management. I mentioned that the annual report 2012 is the last one which is approved. I mentioned the budgets. I mentioned that the tax compliance, etc., etc. There's much to approve. We see some ambitions, and from our role, we will encourage that, but I believe there is much to improve, and there has not been that many progress. There has been very little progress, to be precise, in the last years.
In the last years, very little progress in budget management. Okay, okay, I have to make it clear that the people understand, because we listen to the press briefings of government, we listen to Parliament, and we need to make sure we have these things right. What the CFT says, that is the advisory body, and what government says, because that's what the people takes for granted. There wasn't talk about diversification and in the tax reform going to a more direct taxes or indirect taxes. How does that work, and would that make a difference in what we do?
Yes. I think in many countries you see that the share between direct and indirect taxes is going a little bit more to indirect taxes. Because direct taxes are on labor or on capital, and you have more that way lost. So I think it's good to have this discussion as well, not only to have a new tax office, but also see whether there should be new taxes. The indirect taxes, for example, sugar tax can be, for example, an example where, you see also that lifestyle of people, so that can be related to that as well. So I think it's good to have this discussion in public. We as CFT are only advisory body in this respect, but I think as other countries all around the world put more emphasis on especially indirect taxes. And if you look at the figures also from the IMF, I see that the indirect taxes here in Sint Maarten are rather low.
Extremely low. The other thing we need to reconcile with the NVs. The NVs has a lot of fees that formerly were taxes that were turned over to NVs. Can the government generate more revenue with adding things to what the airport, the port, and those that have millions of visitors yearly, add other fees or taxes, because the airport calls them fees, they're basically taxes for government. Can we add things that would help generate more funds there?
Well, that's, I say, we don't look, we only look at the relation with the budget, but this should be a very good question for the members of parliament, but also for your audit chamber. I think it would be very good to have a report on this. I saw also some good reports from your audit chamber. But it's a good question, but it's not. From our position, we only look at the relation with the budget.
Oh, okay. The 220 budget support, from what I read, I'm only following what they say, is supposed to be presented in April, And I don't know how it's going to go because when it reaches Parliament, things. But should it be adopted in April?
I think yes, it should be adopted in April, definitely, because there are this capital expenditure are related to it. Also, the liquidity issues are related. So I even believe it should be March. But of course, it's difficult also because of this Article 25 procedural. But the sooner the better, I would say. And I think that also Parliament should take his responsibility.
Okay, so we're way behind past December, but we're getting there. Hopefully, we get it right. I would like to thank you for coming in, giving some information. I'm sure my people are more informed. Would like anything you'd like to say for the people of Cement to understand the purpose and the role of CFT in St. Martin?
Yes, sure. Well, I think everything has already been on the table, but it was very pleasant to be here on the radio, to have this conversation with you. And I'm impressed. I was here, I started just before the hurricane, so I saw the
Came in the wrong time.
devastation. I also saw the resilience of the people of St. Martin. Well, your economy is in a very good shape, as I told you, 5.5% growth in 2019, and now it's time that the government will do the same. That's what I wish to the people of St. Martin, and I wish them good luck.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I get some financial knowledge. Okay, radio listeners, TV, we've been speaking to the president of the CFT, the Financial Oversight Commission. We've been given information on the budget and how things function in St. Martin. We hope you have been informed. And today, Parliament meets at 10 o'clock. Parliament meets at 10 o'clock today, and they will be discussing the ban on single-use plastic bags. This is a meeting that goes over from December 5th last year and was initiated by a member of Parliament, Sarah Westcott Williams. So if you have the time, do listen in at 10 o'clock and see the decision taken by our government, by Parliament, on single-use plastic bags. It seems like we're the only island in the Caribbean that is dragging behind when it comes to banning single-use plastic bags. Also, at 2 o'clock, Parliament will be meeting on the land tax law. It's another meeting that was carried over from November 6th last year, and it's going to be reconvened at 2 o'clock, and we hope that we'll get a decision on it this time and not have to postpone again. We go further on the news that would affect us today. We read that the St. Martin Housing Development Foundation has requested some $45 million to be able to build homes and repair homes. Something needs to happen, something needs to be looked at in the management and the approach of the SMHDF. We have not been able to repair our homes after the hurricane. They're lagging behind. There are a lot of court cases where the tenants were given the leeway to withhold certain parts of their rents to repair their homes. And it seems as if the St. Martin Housing Development Foundation, which is supposed to be a manager of affordable housing, or in St. Martin terms, low-income housing. But how that works really in other countries is that if it is low-income or affordable, it would mean that there is some kind of subsidy from the government to keep it running to offset the low rents offered to those who cannot afford. So the elderly, the pensioned, and those out of work. It would seem, and I don't have all the figures, that our government has not been subsidizing this organization, and what are supposed to be affordable or low income is not that affordable to everybody anymore. We have seen over the years that the Housing Development Foundation has taken many tenants to court for non-payment, and they have had some evicted, which is hard for people who are ready. In a country where housing is not readily available, to be put out on the street is very difficult. I understand that it's not a charitable organization, it's a business, and they run on money. But the very purpose of establishing it was not to do exactly where they're going now. But we will see how that is acted upon. I don't know. We know our government is hard strapped. We heard from the CFT that, we have a 5.5% growth in the economy. So we should be able to generate some more money. But I can't foresee right now that government would be given to the Housing Foundation the 45 million. I don't know right now where they would even get it from, considering all the other things we have to do with helping the individual citizens who have lost their homes or lost shelter since the hurricanes. Another thing we noticed with much interest, yesterday in Parliament there was a meeting, a continuation meeting on the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force recommendations on what needs to be done. And we see that the four opposition parties, that is the PFP, the UD, the US party, three opposition parties, have called for an urgent meeting on this issue. They don't believe there should be another a return of the the Central Committee. They believe this issue, which has been carried over from December 12th, should be ready now to come back to the table so they can finalize this. As you know, as you've heard, we have complied with most everything. We need to make some adjustments. We're missing on Article 23 and Article 53, I think, if I remember well. Things we have to do to comply, and we are not there yet. So the opposition parties are of the opinion that this meeting should be recalled urgently, forthwith, to finalize this and get all the niches ironed out and avoid, of course, a probable blacklisting of St. Martin. We have seen already the effect of a statement in terms of the post office being able to do money transfers. And if that is going to be the overall effect in business in St. Martin, we're heading down a wrong road. And I think we wait and see when this meeting is reconvened. We know yesterday's meeting has been put off for a week for the minister to come back with answers. The three opposition parties are saying they don't need the minister to come back with answers. They need to get the plenary session completed, and they would have been able to come to a decision on the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force. And before leaving, something I'd like to bring to the attention of the people. I followed last night and Tuesday night until late on social media and on another radio station, the comments of people on the meeting held with the Minister of Labor and her proposal, her implementation of a new labor policy, which tends or is intended to ensure work, employment, gainful employ for locals. That's the way it was put. Members of Parliament, members of the UP party, called a meeting and have the minister present to ask certain questions. The general public is of the opinion, first of all, that it's strange that Parliament, a few months after election, 1 month after election, doesn't know who locals are. Maybe if we use bona fide citizens, it would include more people. It would include those who have who are legal, who are in the country with documents and stuff like that, the fact still remains that the majority of businesses in St. Martin do not employ St. Martiners, first of all, and they avoid employing people who have legal registration, legal documents to be in the country. It's not a secret. Every party, every individual parliamentarian knows what happens here and the abuse that is being taken of the people. I was interested, very encouraged by the input of the chair, Mr. Bryson, said that if we put counterpart policy with these employment permits, it will go a long way instead of having to introduce another policy. But I do believe the impression created from Parliament, a Parliament that prided itself of the we can help we and we looking out for our own. The questions that asked were as if they were kind of antagonistic against the minister for having the audacity to come with a policy that says to business people, it is high time that you give locals a fair chance. But you can follow more of this on social media and on many radio stations. The last word on this has not yet been written, but as I said yesterday, the minister has my total support because while many parliamentarians are talking about if it was discussed with everybody or if not, this was possible since 1979, and there has never been from any politician or any government a move to protect the local workforce, and it is high time. And I think the minister's on the right track. And sometimes, when you do the right thing, you're going to get flack, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do the right thing anyway. That's the end of the program for today. We thank you for tuning in to the morning show with Elton. Just do have a pleasant day further. Goodbye.